I'm looking for this guy. Oh, it's okay. Yeah.
WoW Mythic Raiding versus Final Fantasy 14.
I don't want to get spoiled though, dude. Because he's going to talk about the Alexander. IOTC, is this the Alexander room? No. It's not spoilers. We want to understand what's going on anyway. Okay.
Ultimate Raids. This is a video you have been asking for many times now.
I'm going to listen to him mostly. I'm going to look.
Commenting on this topic until I actually get it. First point I'd like to discuss is the size of the raid roster. Whilst Mythic raids are designed for 20-man raids, Final Fantasy Ultimates are designed for 8-man raids. And what happens in Final Fantasy statics is that when one player can't make a night of raid, well, you can likely find a makeup raid or another night amongst the 7 other raiders. A smaller group allows for more flex around timing, and as such, in Final Fantasy, you never hear of running a bench. Now, in WoW, every single...
I do think you would still run like one person. It is a tilter though as well. I would feel like in Final Fantasy, if you don't have that bench, if you don't have anyone, and somebody can't make it, like we had it on Titan, like in 2 weeks, Potter can't be there. So if you do a raid in 2 weeks, Potter just will not be there. It's a bit weird. I don't know. I don't necessarily like it.
Competitive Mythic guild has a deep bench, and this is typically around a total roster size of 25 to 26 people, so 5 to 6 people on their bench. And why is that so? Let's imagine you run a strict 20-man roster with no bench. And if someone has a real-life emergency, for example, when his or her goldfish is drowning, you literally have caused 19 other people to waste their raid night because the fight is just...
That's not true. That's not the reason, actually, because why you run a bench in WoW. At least not what I think. The reason you really want to run a bench in WoW is because you want a class stack. You need to have certain classes for certain fights. If you get into the 20 same people and they were always there, you would still have to have a bench because you can't maintain multiple alts and stuff like that. And mostly because you want a class stack, because you can't play the same class on one character. But yeah, let's see what he thinks.
Doable with only 19 people. It is also very challenging to find a makeup raid night for 19 people due to scheduling conflicts. Also, in World of Warcraft, it's very hard to find substitutes at the last minute, simply because if, let's say, after the weekly reset, I've already taken part in a mythic raid in some shape or form, and I've only killed one boss, let's say boss A, I essentially have bound my character to that mythic raid lockout for the rest of the week. So even if my friend asked me to go into another raid instance to kill boss B, which I've never done in my raid lockout, I'm unable to even zone into the same instance as their raid group. So in WoW, typically people run...
Isn't that the same thing in WoW? Like in Final Fantasy, can you run different bosses of that same tier, even on progress? But then you could split run it and get loot for... Only has loot lockout. How does that work? Sophia said that roughly the tier is so short that time isn't worth it. Now, that's something that could be true. I'm glad you don't have to do this.
Run a bench of 5 to 6 people, because chances of more than one person not making a raid for a specific night is actually quite likely. And because of the need to run a bench, my sense is there's more roster drama in WoW than Final Fantasy, especially at endgame raiding. Because that difficult conversation of having to tell 4 to 5 people you are sitting out on this brand new fight feels bad. And trust me, nobody likes sitting on the bench and watching other people do the fight while you twiddle your thumbs and draw circles on the ground. Those people are constantly on the lookout for a more long-term guaranteed starting spot in another roster. And because of the need to run a bench, WoW's roster boss problem is way harder than Final Fantasy Statics' problem. You have a higher turnover in WoW rosters, and recruiting players is actually something that top mythic guilds have to constantly do throughout the entire tier. Click dramas within a 20-man roster is common, where one person in a group of close friends is not picked for a fight, the other 3 to 4 members of his clique is disgruntled, and they might all end up leaving together as a group. In which case, the raid leader is left with a gaping hole of 4 to 5 people, and the raid leader needs to bring in replacement, which does take time. I'm sure there's drama in Final Fantasy Statics too, but I would guess that it's to a lesser degree. Another thing I've noticed about raiding in a 8-people cell versus a 20-man group is that the...
Just FYI, by the way, guys, our roster is like 32 people. So almost half of our people is like bench all the time. It's 12 people on the bench all the time out of 32. It's super sad. Definitely sucks. It's just shit, but it's just what you have to do. It's also a lot more than just the people playing the game, you know. It gets even worse. There are times where, you know, your character will get loot, but you have to trade it away, and you will have to do shit to help others get loot and just not gain anything yourself from it. And like times where you know you're gonna be outside basically forever because you got shit RNG. It's definitely not good. It's very bad design. It needs a whole like overhaul and like full change. I don't know.
Now, I'd like to move on to talk about the importance of specs and classes in WoW versus jobs in Final Fantasy. And this is where they differ as well. I feel in World of Warcraft, cutting-edge mythic raid teams have a way stronger emphasis on bringing the right specs and classes. Final Fantasy does have it to a certain degree, but I'm told most of the community subscribes to bringing the player over actual jobs. The consensus generally is to bring the player that is more comfortable on whatever he's best on in terms of jobs, rather than force them to play a job they're not familiar with. Now,
I mean, two things. Obviously, I don't know how much that is true because I'm not a Warfirst Final Fantasy raider, so I don't know how important the roles are. The main thing is not that you would have to change jobs. The main thing is you don't have to change players to change jobs. You can just tell your tanks to play all tanks, and you're done. That's some good shit. In WoW, to do that, you need to maintain a million characters, and you need to do your weekly power on all of them. You need to do your dailies on all of them. You need to do a billion, zillion, trillion shit like that has nothing to do with gaming. And it's just full tilt, so nobody does it unless you're a complete no-lifer, and those people are usually not good at the game. That's the main issue, I would say. Like that, you have to bring certain classes. Like, who cares? Yeah, that's fine. Honestly, I'm completely okay with that. I enjoy class stacking to break mechanics and stuff like that.
But let's compare this to World of Warcraft, where I think spec and class optimization is way more important. In World of Warcraft, you have certain classes in the roster that are a must bring if you are serious about mythic raiding.
I mean, again, this is the stuff that I don't care. I don't mind class stacking. It's more that, you can't play multiple classes at once.
14, they are actually equally capable of designing really innovative and engaging fight mechanics. Both are equally capable of designing fun mechanics that makes the boss really engaging. Quick examples. Before I did Ultimate Weapon, I've never seen a raid mechanic like Suppression before, where you have multiple...
Yo! Spoilers! I don't know what Suppression is, but we're not going to learn that today.
Difference comes when it's about resolving your mechanics. Like I covered extensively in another video, WoW always had the benefits of add-ons and weak auras. Think of this as CACbot for WoW, except it can be programmed to do very pretty nutty stuff, including resolving mechanics. For example, if I get this combination of debuff, I should be moving to marker X. People who did Queen Ajara Intermission will know what I'm talking about. Or it can even send you text alerts on which marker you should be moving to at which exact second of the fight. But since you like examples...
Dude, this would be so easy to code probably for Final Fantasy as well. Like worst case, literally like as an external program, you could do so crazy shit. I don't think it would be even hard to do. I don't know what the game allows you, but even if the game didn't allow you could do so much shit.
And as you can see from the text on my screen, it actually tells me which marker I should go to perform my actions. That is the power of using external add-ons and weak auras to resolve mechanics in World of Warcraft. But you get the point. In WoW, weak auras and mythic raiding for cutting-edge content is basically mandatory. World-first racing teams have dedicated weak aura makers that they bring to world-first races during launch weeks. So while the innovation and complexity of mechanics are comparable across both games, World of Warcraft does allow you to rely on external add-ons to solve them much more readily versus Final Fantasy XIV. Because keep in mind, there are tons of weak aura makers out there for WoW versus Final Fantasy, because I guess those who actually support and develop for CACbot are pretty much in minority. And I think it's also worth calling out that in World of Warcraft, new raids are available to be tested on public test realms. Everyone can log in to...
That's the worst thing. That's probably worse than global release. It's so... I mean, that would be... that's also kind of super bad, actually. But this is so bad. Like, holy fuck, bro. I would much more prefer simpler boss fights, but they don't get tested. Like, script it all. Don't make it super complex, but don't test it. It will be so much better. Like, crazy better. Honestly, I would be very surprised if they don't change it after the next year. It is just the biggest thing. Now that people are aware of what you can do in Final Fantasy, that you can get these puzzles for the first time and enjoy it and don't need to work for it beforehand and spend hours strategizing for no reason for things that might get changed on live version anyways. I don't know. PTR is free testing though. They won't get rid of it, I fear. Yeah, I mean, sounds great, but I think they will to make the people happy because people have seen that it's possible now. Back then, like, honestly, I thought it's not possible either. I was like, without PTR, the boss is just going to be too buggy. Well, guess not. Why is it not buggy in Final Fantasy? Copium things will change. Yes, dude. Copium global release in 2 tiers, I believe. No more split runs. Only 22 man roster, not 32. It's fine. I believe, dude. It really feels like in WoW, when I play the fights, I mean, I guess maybe it's also like that in Final Fantasy because you get the normal mode released. But it's like I've played it already a million times. Like it's like when I played for the first time on live servers, it feels like I already played it a million times. It's like on farm. It would be cool, honestly, if the Savage came out the same. Like, why does Savage not come out the same time as normal? I guess that's when they do some bug fixes. Or only first year it does. Wait, dude, really? This next year this next expansion tier is gonna be released at the same time. Holy shit! Nice, dude. That's really nice. Wait, no, the first tier is delayed. Oh shit. Okay. Well, that's better because it's more often at the same time, I guess. That's really cool that it comes at the same time. I thought you get normal and then you have like time to study it. Well, then I still don't understand. I'm surprised they don't do it instant on the first tier as well. Why do they not do the first tier instant either? So people don't rush. Oh.
Now, I'd like to move on to talk about visual design. World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV both have distinct looks to their visual and art style, and I don't think there's a right or wrong if you prefer one over the other. However, where I think the raid design actually differs visually is the transition phases. Final Fantasy for Ultimate Weapon has the intermission where Ultimate Weapon starts dismantling.
Whoa, no spoilers.
Had some beautiful soundtracks over the years, but I would argue they exist outside of raids.
True, the music in this game is fucking sick. It's insanely good. It's so good. I didn't even know that playing games with their music is a thing. Like, I have just everything muted on WoW. Everyone has. If you don't, it's kind of weird. You're like trolling a little bit. In this game, you just want to keep it on. It's the same music over and over, and it's still good. I have no idea how. Maybe not everybody enjoys it. Like, my wife says always, like, what the fuck is this music all the time? It's the same thing over and over again. And I'm like, I don't know. I like it.
The next thing I'd like to talk about is replayability. This is a huge distinction from...
I mean, we don't even need to talk about it, right? Like, replayability in WoW, you go there, you one-shot things. In this game, you just pop the no echo, the gear scaling, easy game, easy life. Still talking about replayability.
Offered the option to do so for raiding in both games. Way higher barrier to mythic raiding than Final Fantasy XIV has for ultimate raids in terms of the prep work that you need. Let me explain.
Yeah, dude, he doesn't need to explain. Like, I told you about the 1.4k islands, right? I mean, it's so bad. Dude, the only reason we were able to play these like games like New World or Final Fantasy, the only reason we had time was because Blizzard was too late with content. They didn't make it in time. Outside of that, you were not able to try anything. You were not able to think anything outside of WoW. If you did that, you didn't have enough prep. You fucked up. You had to constantly chase the carrot, constantly prep for the next thing. You have to do an insane amount of prep. And it's not because like it's going to give you something huge either, or you have to do them. You technically don't have to, but it's good to do them. Every time we're like, how much should we do, right? Like, how many characters should we prepare? Should we do our dailies on them? You can answer everything with no, and you can still win the race. But every time you do something extra, your chances of winning increases slightly. Every hour you spend in the game, maybe it's like 0.001% probability increase in winning the tier, maybe even less. But because there's 6 months between the tier, you can spend a lot of hours, get a lot of that increase and stack it up. And even if it's in the end a 1% increase, that's better than not having that 1%. So you just keep doing it. It's crazy. Yeah, so prep, I mean, we know all about it, dude. I don't know what he's going to say, but yeah, let's see.
In FF14, all you need to do to prep for ultimates is to farm your BIS gear or best in slot gear on your character in every slot. And these are mostly from Savage raids. In WoW, Firstly, you need to work towards getting your BIS gear from Heroic Raids and Mythic Plus dungeons before you even step into Mythic Raid. Obviously, if you don't, you won't meet DPS checks in Mythic Raiding, or you won't even have the stamina or health pool to survive AoE attacks. But so far, Heroic Raids and Mythic Plus Dungeon does sound fairly familiar and similar to the work needed for Final Fantasy XIV, and I agree with your assessment. But World of Warcraft has a very big chunk of its player power tied to external systems. These are things that exist beyond your gear slots. For example, in the Shadowlands, we have Covenants and Soulbinds. Think of them as external talent trees that you need to maintain and progress by doing various weeklies and dailies and repeatable quests. And I've not mentioned Torghast, which is a very tedious
Bro, like honestly, listening to this just makes me depressed. Yeah, like let's just skip over this. It's just tilt. Like we all know, it's just tilt. And we just go next topic. Honestly, I cannot listen to this. It's like stabbing the wound. Like the knife is already inside, and then he's like twisting it and twisting it. Like yeah, I know, man. It just sucks. Yeah, it sucks. Yes. You know what makes me feel better is always these beautiful Twitch primes and the gifted subs, guys. If you really want to make me feel better, I mean, that's one way. Up to you guys.
Random. Furthermore, a lot of these external systems are time gated. Example, by week X, you can only unlock roll 4 of your external system, and you need to wait until week Y to get roll 5.
Oh yes, dude. Let me rub the tier 1 subs to my wounds. Ooh, that feels good. Thanks, dude. It worked. Ratiometric.
There's just no artificial gates like that in Final Fantasy XIV.
That's
levels.
I think that's the last topic, right? Yeah, okay.
Patreon subscribers and a
let's subscribe to the channel. It was a very nice explanation, by the way, of the whole thing. That's it. But yeah, WoW needs to step up their game, man. They like, from what I've seen, Final Fantasy just doesn't milk their players to death, which is what I feel like WoW is doing. Maybe not to death, but just so you're barely alive. It's not good. I'll sub if you quit WoW. That's not how it works, dude. That's not how it works.